right, it's time now to look at what the papers are saying in this session of this Daybreak. What we'll talk about, we'll look at the front pages of both local and international papers. And we have in the studio rather, Dr. Constance Ikokwe, journalist, political commentator, and analyst. Good to have you here. Join us. Good morning.
Good morning, Andy. How are you? Good morning. Good. And good morning, Nkechi.
Good morning, Dr. Ikokwe.
Well, to review the papers with us this morning, we have Chuks Akonna. He's an executive director with Authority newspaper. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning for having me.
Morning to you, Chuks.
Hello, viewers. We are going to start this morning with This Day newspaper. In This Day, electricity supply, FG pays 205 billion naira from 1.3 trillion naira owed power generating companies. The Minister of Power, Chief Adebayo Adelabu, was speaking at an oversight visit to the House of Representatives Committee on Power. He said lawmakers must continue to power pressure on the executive to pay off debts in the power sector. According to him, quote, a lot of towers are falling, the substations are dilapidated with very old transformers, some of which were installed in the 60s. The same thing with distribution structure. Out of 12 million electricity customers, just a little over 5 million are metered, leaving a gap of 7 million. The mandate is to achieve 2 million meters on a yearly basis for the next 5 years. I mean, the power generation companies and even distribution companies always complain that they struggle with liquidity in the market. This is a good example of why that's the case. Whether it's the metering or high level of debt, it's a no-brainer that the industry under this condition will struggle. Chuks.
Exactly. It's a cheering news that federal government has started to pay about a fifth of the money of the debt owed power generating companies, power distributing companies, by government agencies. It's only in Nigeria that people use utility without paying, free of charge, free of cost, without paying for it. And like you rightly pointed out, it's really hampering the efforts of power generation companies because, it's a service. And once you get service, you should pay for it. You know, we often complain that we don't have enough, that the discos and the gencos and discos don't supply us enough electricity. And then each time we run our generating sets for a few hours, we know how much it costs us. But we tell people to pay their monthly light power bills. They don't. How do you expect public utility to function without paying for services rendered? So it's a good one that the federal government has bailed the cat. That started by paying off a fifth. But then better, they say half bread is better than none. But the fact is that, we should impress upon government agencies to pay up so that we can have, so they can plow back these monies and improve power supplies around the country.
It's not only the government owing, so this issue of metering as well. If you do not know who is using the service, then they cannot pay appropriately. I think this partly explains the substantial problem that this industry faces. And in terms of the government, it also shows whether it's misplacement of priorities. Why should a very critical sector, which is arguably one of the most driving forces in a modern economy, be facing this kind of problem? It shows that you haven't paid as much attention to it, indeed.
Exactly. Misplacement of priorities. One wonders why the infrastructure are dilapidated over how many years. It's just like our oil sector, where you have only 4 refineries, and over the years, not one has been built, and the ones there are not even working now. And you find out that most of the huge debts incurred are from government agencies that the people are supposed to pay. Well, the Minister of Power says he's going to look at, tariffs, whether going to bring it down or not. But one of the most important things here is the metering. There's what you call, I don't know what you call it again, assumed, when people don't have meters.
Estimated billing.
Estimated bills.
Yes.
So Nigerians are even suffering from the estimated bills. So the faster or earlier people get metered, the better. Better for the government, better for the gencos and the discos, better for electricity and what have you. And he says that the pilot scheme of the, cement steel is nearing. That's an interesting one. We'll hope that that one fully kicks off.
Well, let's move on to Daily Trust. Kano Governor COS, Kwankwaso's nephew, others under probe. And there's a second story there which says a 90 billion naira Hajj subsidy probe. Tinubu fires NACON chairman Arabi. The Kano State Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission has launched investigations of a multi-million naira procurement fraud of alleged mismanagement of federal government palliatives. Among those expected to be questioned are Musa Garba Kwankwaso, a nephew of Senator Rabiu Kwankwaso, and Chief of Staff to the Governor Shehu Sagaji. A company in which Musa Kwankwaso is a director was reportedly awarded a contract to supply drugs to 44 local government areas. The contract was awarded without due process, and we have all the stories. I mean, it seems a scintillating story for the media, but available information indicates that the anti-corruption agency is still at the stage of gathering information and requesting documents and inviting individuals in order to see what this whole thing is about. So there isn't much to say until the investigations are concluded, which is why people always say, how do these kind of stories get into the media and to the front page? You need everything to be concluded in order to have a better picture. At the same time, it also shows when processes are abused, you know, in terms of government contracts and people that are related to government officials. Chooks.
Very interesting. I think why it has made it to the front pages is obviously because of the problem between Governor Yusuf and his predecessor, his immediate predecessor, and the APC national chairman. We've seen efforts by the former Governor Ganduje, who is now the APC chairman, to frustrate moves by anti-corruption agencies to probe him. So that said, we've now seen that the optics in Kano State is very, very interesting because for the first time we're seeing a state government that's not shielding its own persons. You know, it's literally giving out, handing over the chief of staff to the governor and the nephew of the party leader in the governor's godfather and political godfather and the party leader around all over Nigeria. So it's very interesting because it goes to show you that Governor Yusuf is trying to raise the bar on the fight against corruption. You know, let's juxtapose that with what's happening in federal government level. You know, national chairman of the APC, so much has been said about him, you know, about the dollar, the dollar bribery issue, and the federal government appears not to be interested in that matter. So like I said, it's the optics that matters. It shows that Governor Yusuf is determined to set examples with even people who are very close to his cabinet. Well,
the anti-corruption chairman there has also been doing quite a number of, quite a good job. He was on a rise sometime, I think last year or early this year. He talked about the kind of pressures that are mounted on him in order not to do his job, but he's continuing to do so. Let's move on to New Telegraph. 5 years after, appeal court to hear SCJN Onnoghen's suit challenging his removal from office today. Former Chief Justice Walter Onnoghen filed a suit at the Court of Appeal in 2019. He challenged the judgment of the Code of Conduct Tribunal CCT that ordered his removal. He prayed the court to void the judgment on grounds that it lacked jurisdiction to preside over the matter, and the tribunal chairman was biased and denied him fair hearing. Onnoghen argued that the National Judicial Council had the power to discipline him for misconduct. While 5 years after, to begin hearing a case of that magnitude, we all remember how unceremoniously Onnoghen was removed from office by the executive arm in order to make way for their own candidate. It shows an entire system that flouts its own law, engages in abuse of process, and has little or no dignity or moral standing to accuse others of wrongdoing. Nkechi.
Yes, you're right. I remember when this case was going on, it was such a big deal and everyone was shocked that the Chief Justice of Nigeria could be removed without any input from the NJC. And so I think this appeal, whether 5 years later, 10 years later, is not really Onnoghen just trying to clear his name. It's more of a direct challenge to processes and sort of decisions of the Code of Conduct Tribunal. He's arguing that they lack jurisdiction and that the chairman at that time, Danladi Umar, should have recused himself, raising sort of serious questions about the integrity of those proceedings. And I think the heart of the matter lies in whether the CCT was the appropriate forum to decide on such a matter. And so if the Court of Appeal sides with Onnoghen, it could set a precedent that will now reshape how judicial officers are held accountable in Nigeria.
I mean, Nkechi also highlights the relationship between the executive and the judiciary. The executive funds the judiciary, and so when this entire process was playing out, or drama was playing out, because there was a lot that happened under that government.
I think, sorry to cut you, I think it was one of the fastest cases I had witnessed. I was covering that, I was in the judicial space at the time, and I was covering this case, and it was adjourned like back to back. We were going to CCT every single day. It wasn't a case of we're adjourning to next month. No, it was so fast. And this doesn't come as a surprise. It's more of a surprise that it's taken this long, really.
And it showed the weakness of the judiciary at that time. Under that government, it also flouted a lot of court rulings. It was terrible for the judiciary, and here we are. We have a new CJ and Mrs. Kekereku. Let's see what happens, if there's any reforms that will happen in that arm of government. Well, let's see Guardian newspaper. In the Guardian states 600 billion naira right of way, actually, or ROW fees stall 90 power telecoms project. The desperation of state governments to increase revenue profile may have stalled over 90 projects across the country and complicated efforts to increase electricity output. This comes as the Transmission Company of Nigeria grapples with 600 billion naira outstanding grant rents owed different states, which are trading off the opportunity to attract power infrastructure to the domains for revenue. From this report, we gather that incidents such as this cause instability in the sector, a sector that is very crucial for this country. This is a disturbing sign, Ndi.
Yeah, very disturbing indeed. I mean, we just talked about what's his name, Adela, with the Ministry of Power, talking about dilapidated infrastructure and the fact that you have to upgrade the infrastructure that Nigeria has. So, right of way, let the fees get paid so that we can have better services from the telecoms, and then, of course, power. That's very key.
I mean, Chooks, it's not only about let the right of way be paid. It's also about amounts, how much this should cost. And so in this story, they were urging the federal government to step in to help them negotiate. So we're dealing with national interest and state interest, states trying to raise their revenue profile or generate internally revenue, as they call it. So which presides over the other, or which is more important, Chooks?
Yes, it's very interesting because the Land Use Act vests the powers to over control of land in state governments. The governors are the only persons that can actually issue certificate of occupancy for prospective land owners in states. The federal government has no right to allocate land anywhere in Nigeria to anybody except through the state governments. And apparently there's a lot of pressure mounting on state governments to generate revenue. So the irony is now, or the challenge now is, do we charge so much for right of way for power facilities at the expense of providing power to far-flung communities and states? Because we all know that for you to evacuate power from transmission stations, you have to do that via pylons, and national grid. pylons, power facilities to go to communities, they have to be mounted on land, and we all know that whenever these facilities pass through land, it's right of way for them, because you can't build houses, you can't do anything underneath these transmission lines. So I think there's need for the federal government and states to strike a balance, because you cannot, at the expense of taxes, deny 220 million Nigerians steady power supply, which these transmission companies seek to achieve.
Look at that article once more. It talks about substations in Kano State, for instance, and Kaduna State that cannot take off because of this disagreement about how much is to be paid, or what should be paid, or what should not be paid, and then the disagreement goes on, and it sort of stalls everything. Indeed.
Well, there should be a particular way to decide on these things, because this is slowing down both the economic progress of the nation, because you're talking about power sector, you're talking about telecoms. I don't know, but there should be a particular way of deciding this thing so that it doesn't stall these projects. One hopes that they will get around to it, and then the bottlenecks will be taken off, so that whatever needs to be paid, whenever it needs to be paid, will be paid, so this projects can take off.
Well, we'll be watching that. Let's move to the international headlines this morning. We will begin with Citizen South Africa. Parliament chaos looms. Turmoil with floor crossing and defections to other political parties is on the cards in Parliament as 10 sacked MPs launch a court bid to challenge their sacking by the Jacob Zuma party. The MPs believe they were sacked to make room for defecting economic freedom fighters members. Less than 3 months into the new government of national unity that was sworn in, party defections appear to be the order of the day. I mean, a seeming upheaval in the South African parliament. Former President Jacob Zuma's party was hopeful. No, not former president. I mean, President Ramaphosa was hopeful that this government of national unity, following his party's failure to win the majority, will go on well. Now it's looking like it's more difficult than envisaged. Obviously, for the African National Congress, this is a new territory that they are in, so it's going to be a steep learning curve for them, and we're already seeing that, Chooks.
Yes, exactly. I mean, for the very first time since the end of apartheid and black majority rule in South Africa, the ANC dominant party suffered a very humiliating, I'll call that defeat, because even though it won majority of the votes, but, the margin wasn't as it used to be. So, and then, actions, they say, have consequences. And now here we are. We see the parties trying to fight back, and then you see, that's why the citizen is reporting that there will be chaos, that chaos looms in the parliament of South Africa. So for the very first time, we've seen that ANC, just like we used to have in Nigeria, when Vincent Ogbulafo of Blessed Memory prophesied that that PDP was going to rule Nigeria for the next 60 years. So we've seen, like in Nigeria and in South Africa, things are never always what they seem to be. 24 hours in politics is a very, very long time, and this is playing out in the South African parliament.
There's going to be more coming from that. We'll see how that goes. Let's move on to the Washington Post. In the Washington Post, Biden details achievements, credits Harris. He urges crowds to vote for democracy by supporting the Harris Wars ticket. Also, Hillary Clinton says Harris will break the hardest glass ceiling in the history of the country. I mean, the Democratic National Convention started yesterday. There were impassioned speeches from several speakers, first of all, thanking President Biden for stepping down for his service to the country. And of course, Hillary Clinton, a woman who tried to break that glass ceiling, is fully backing Kamala Harris, and she's hoping that this time they'll do it. In Kechi, we're women, so...
Yeah, exactly. I think it was very important to have Hillary Clinton make that speech, hopefully backing Kamala Harris. She tried to do that back in 2016 but lost to Donald Trump. I think it was a really great statement for her to be on that stage and say, look, I tried to do this, and I think she said that was her highest honor, accepting the ticket for the party at that time, and just supporting Kamala Harris. And I think the DNC, these 4 days, I think one of their main key goals is just to show that unity. You know, we've been talking about how President Joe Biden was forced to relinquish his ticket, and I think they're using this DNC to really just show the unity in the party. President Biden, they're talking about how hate has no place in America, and we'll just see how the next 3 days, I think, is remaining for the DNC goes, and Kamala Harris's acceptance speech on the last day should be something to watch out for.
Well, the momentum is with the Democratic Party for now, but also yesterday it was the convention was punctured by a protest, you know, a pro-Palestine protest, because they have been against President Biden's policies, fully supporting Israel. So you have that by the corner there. People were bussed from all over the country to come and say to the DNC, you cannot continue this policy even if you win the election Sunday.
Interesting, very interesting things. One thing you note about the DNC's convention is that it's a roll call of who is who. I didn't see that during the Republican, because I mean the Republicans themselves are saying it's a Trump party. He's taking over the party.
It is.
So you didn't see anybody. Yes. But here, you talked about the protest. It didn't touch the convention. The president himself said, in fact, he referred to it. He said there are protesters outside, and they have a right to have a voice. That was very particular. He was talking about democracy. They have a right to have a voice. And then he also talked about the Palestinian, the Gaza war, and Israel. And on that, he even banged his fist on the table, saying that, look, it's time for this war to come to an end because of the loss of lives on both sides. It's very key, that statement he made. And of course, he supported Harris, saying that, I mean, it's high time to defend democracy, you know, against Trump. I guess we're going to be calling it a day here.
Yes, we have to.
On the program. It's interesting. Thank you, Dr. Constance, and thank you, Achuks Akuna over there. I am Ndi Amugu, thanking you for watching. Next on our bill here is the morning show, and like you know, every moment indeed does matter on Arise News. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. I'm Ikechi Nana.